Randall Jones, thank you very much for joining us at Asia House. Let's start with Japan. 5 consecutive quarters of growth, which looks very positive. But in your latest economic survey released last month, one gets the impression that it's a rather pessimistic outlook. Please, brief us.
Well, the upturn is really driven by exports, and it comes from demand from China and other Asian countries. So that's driving up exports, and business investment recovered as well. But the big concern is private consumption. That's almost 60% of GDP, and it's still below where it was in 2014 before the tax hike came in. So until we get private consumption really becoming strong as it was before the tax hike, the economy is going to still be a bit fragile and weak. So we want to see more wage growth and see that translate into private consumption.
The longer term outlook, though, is pretty challenging. Japan has an aging population and a shrinking population. The economy's in need of structural reform. It looks pretty challenging politically to get through, and a huge level of debt. Those three, I'd imagine, would make your outlook longer term quite a pessimistic one.
Right, we only forecast about 2 years in the future, but as you say, if the population is falling, the working age population, even if you make it 15 to 74, it's still declining. And so that means that if you have a smaller labor input, productivity has to increase just to keep your standard of living. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, you have to pay the social welfare. The elderly population is growing. So you have the fiscal problem as well as a declining population. So it will be a very challenging period ahead during the next 20, 30 years for Japan.
Based on your report, would you dub Abenomics a success?
Yes, a qualified success. The monetary policy has been put in place, and while we haven't achieved 2%, there have been benefits from the quantitative and qualitative easing. The fiscal policy has been flexible, perhaps a bit too much stimulus the recent year, but in our structural reform, we've seen some important measures. The TPP, which unfortunately might not go ahead, but corporate governance has been very important. It's been revised in Japan. We have other reforms in certain sectors. So we've seen some progress for the structural reforms, but we would like to see more in order to sustain productivity and economic growth.
You mentioned the TPP. Clearly, Japan very disappointed that the US pulled out of that in the election of President Trump. It does leave a big gap in the economic plans of Abe and also of the other member countries.
The one part was the agricultural side was being opened up, and in Japan you have the farmers, 70% are over, I think, age 60. So you have an aging farm force and very small farms. So this is a time to open up farming, and that would help the Japanese as well as other countries. So we're hoping that Japan will go ahead with agricultural reform, because you just can't compete with farms that are 1 or 2 hectares. You need to consolidate the farms and put them together and develop more productive agriculture.
Would you expect that to happen despite the basic collapse of TPP?
They started with rice, but they need to do it to other products like barley and wheat, what have you. So Japan's very efficient, very productive for vegetables, fruits, flowers. But when it comes to the field crops, such as barley, soybeans, rice, and wheat, they're very unproductive. So those sectors are very protected and given subsidies. So we need to really reform those sectors. That will lower food prices in Japan, which will help promote consumption, and it will help the country be a higher standard of living.
Another plank of the Abe economic program has been bringing more women into the workforce because of an aging and declining population. Do you sense any traction on that score?
Mm-hmm. Well, market forces are driving it right now. You have a labor shortage in every prefecture in Japan. We have 47 prefectures. Every single one has a labor shortage. And there's 1.43 jobs offered for every job seeker. So there's a tremendous shortage of labor. And so companies are trying to bring in women who are willing to work, perhaps part-time, and they come in and they don't make as much money as full-time workers, even per hour, but they're coming into the labor force, and that is helping to keep employment increasing slightly, even though the population is falling.
We turn to South Korea now, and an extraordinary time in South Korea. The previous President Park is on trial. A new president who has basically had three key policies. One is dialogue with North Korea. The other one is tackling the Chaebol's dominance. And the third one is job creation. Very ambitious program. What's your reading of South Korea?
Well, the Chaebol are, at one hand, the driver of economic growth in Korea. On the other hand, there's inefficiencies and problems that result from the Chaebol's dominant role. So it makes it difficult for new companies to gain a foothold because these large Chaebol, which might have 70 or 80 companies, as Daewoo used to say, they go from chips, potato chips, to ships. Or maybe that was silicon chips, I'm not sure, but they cover a wide range. And if you're an entrepreneur, it can be very difficult to gain a foothold in many sectors. So Korea has great R&D, great education, a lot of human talent, but it's hard for that to be manifest in the economy because of the Chaebol. So we don't want to destroy the Chaebol, we just want them to be more efficient, and we want to open more opportunities for startup companies and entrepreneurs to create innovative firms that will help Korea push on to the next level of development.
But that's very challenging politically, is it not? Because the Chaebols are the big employers. And if you're a president running on a platform of job creation and you try to challenge the corporate elite who have the jobs, you're likely to hit hurdles, are you not?
That's right. Well, the SMEs are lagging farther and farther behind. I know in 1988, the productivity gap in labor productivity was 50%. And now the SMEs are only 30% as productive as large companies. So you have one sector just falling behind while the big Chaebol are internationally competitive. And so we need to change the whole paradigm so that the SMEs become productive and provide high wages, and they have labor shortages because they're so unproductive and have low wages. People don't want to work for them. So there are a lot of jobs are available in South Korea, but they're not attractive because they're an SME. So we have to change the playing field so that the Chaebol and the SMEs together make a dynamic and a competitive economy.
In terms of geopolitics, North Korea clearly has been top of the agenda over the last few months, especially given the very robust exchanges between US President Trump and North Korea and the escalating tensions in the region. Is that having an impact on the economic outlook, and what's your take on how that will play out?
South Korea, they have experienced this for such a long time. They're somewhat impervious. When there's a negative shock, you might have a couple of days where the stock market goes down or the won weakens. But the economy is doing quite well. They're coming back. They're taking part in this rebound in world trade that we see in Asia. China is importing a lot more. So Korea is benefiting from the pickup in world trade. So that's offsetting the political uncertainty and these risks. So we're optimistic that the new president will be able to continue this upward trend. We see scope for more fiscal spending in Korea. It's one of the countries with a surplus. They have a low public debt, and they have a lot of needs that are unmet. So it's a country that could benefit from a bit of fiscal stimulus.
Yeah. Do you expect a conflict, though?
With North Korea?
Yeah.
I think it would be in no one's interest, not in North Korea's interest or in South Korea's interest. So the rational point of view that there's no reason it should happen. So it is our hope that these things could be resolved without conflict.
Dr. Jones, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.